Hey guys, today, we are going back to 1475. No engines, no computers, just pure chess imagination. You are about to see brilliant ideas and very human decisions under pressure. That is the beauty of classical chess. Let us get into it. One quick honesty note before we start. The moves record we have today is a modern transcription or import, not an original 15th century scoresheet. But the game is widely attributed to Francesc de Castellví vs Narcis de Vinyoles, from the famous Valencian poem, Scachs de Amor, in historical chess. This is an absolutely huge game. Opening explanation. From an opening theory perspective, this begins as the Scandinavian Defense, specifically, the Valencian variation in modern databases. White opens with the pawn to e4, claiming space and opening lines. Black immediately replies with the pawn to d5, challenging the center at once. White takes on d5. Black's queen recaptures on d5. That already tells you something important about this era. The queen is now moving with full modern power. White develops the knight to c3, attacking the queen. Black wisely drops the queen back to d8, so even in one of the earliest famous modern games, we already see a very recognizable Scandinavian idea. Black challenges the center early, then gives the queen a retreat square. White continues with the bishop to c4. Black develops the knight to f6. White brings the knight to f3. Black plays bishop to g4. This is an active move, pinning the knight and trying to create pressure before Black finishes development, move by move build up. White responds with h3, asking the bishop a direct question. Modern analysis suggests White had even stronger options here, especially the knight jump to e5. But h3 is a very human move and completely understandable. Black decides not to retreat, and instead plays bishop takes f3. White's queen recaptures on f3. Black follows with e6, trying to solidify the center and prepare development. This is the first real turning point of the game. White's queen takes b7. That is a bold pawn grab, but not a random one. White is attacking loose queenside material and forcing Black to deal with multiple threats. Black develops the knight to d7. White's knight jumps to b5. Black places the rook on c8, and now, White continues the raid with knight takes a7. This is very aggressive. Black answers with knight to b6, trying to challenge the intruder. But White has seen further. Knight takes c8. White wins the rook. Only then does Black's knight take back on c8, so what happened there? White gave up a knight, yes, but only after taking a rook and two pawns. Materially and practically, White comes out very well. In a modern chess game analysis, this is the moment where White's play starts to make real strategic sense, not just poetic sense. White now strengthens the center with d4. Black's knight comes to d6, centralizing and covering key squares. White checks with bishop to b5. Black's knight takes that bishop. White immediately restores pressure with queen takes b5 check, removing that knight from the board and keeping the initiative. Black's remaining knight goes to d7. Now White pushes d5, trying to open the game while Black's king is still stuck in the center. Black answers with pawn takes d5. White develops the other bishop with bishop to e3. Black responds with bishop to d6. White centralizes the rook to d1. Black's queen goes to f6. This is a critical structure. White has better activity, better targets, and Black's king still has not reached safety. Critical moments. White now plays rook takes d5. That is a very instructive move. It wins back the central pawn. It invades the position. It puts a heavy piece directly on the open file, in front of Black's king. This is classic attacking chess. You do not just count material. Count activity, king safety, and open lines. Black replies with queen to g6. The queen may be eyeing kingside ideas, but the real problem is that Black still has not solved the central king issue. White then plays bishop to f4, bringing the bishop onto an active square and increasing pressure. And now comes the move that changed everything. Black plays bishop takes f4. At first glance, that looks natural. Remove an active bishop. Simplify. Hope the danger passes, but there is a hidden tactical problem. Tactical sequence. White now plays queen takes d7 check. This is powerful for several reasons. First, White removes Black's knight from d7. Second, the queen invades deep into the position. Third, it forces the Black king to move. Black's only move is king to f8. And now, the finish, queen to d8 checkmate. That final move is beautiful. The queen lands on d8. She controls the key escape squares. Black's own pieces and pawns help trap the king. The king cannot run to e8, cannot go to e7, and cannot escape toward the king side, because the queen's control becomes absolute once the king tries to move. It is a very clean mating net, defense and resistance. What could Black have done better? Earlier in the queenside sequence, modern engines prefer rook to b8 instead of knight to b6. That would have made White's raid less pleasant. Later, after White's rook invaded on d5, a move like c6 offered more resistance in the center, and in the final critical moment, instead of bishop takes f4, the more stubborn defense was queen to e4 check, creating practical counterplay. So, the game is not technically perfect by modern standards, and that is completely fine. In fact, the literary source itself tells us something important. The authors cared about the symbolic and poetic flow of the game, not just pure engine precision, finish, and result. So, the game ends in 21 moves, with white delivering queen to d8 checkmate, white's early activity, the material raid on the queenside, and then the domination of the d-file, all build naturally toward that final attack. And that is exactly why this game still matters. Not because every move is best, but because it captures the moment chess starts to feel like modern chess. Educational takeaway. There are a few great lessons here. First, if your opponent's king stays in the center, opening files matters more than almost anything else. Second, active pieces can justify bold material decisions. White's queenside raid worked because it was backed by tempo and coordination. Third, natural-looking defensive moves can still lose to a simple tactical pattern if the back rank is weak. And finally, old games are still fantastic for chess improvement because the ideas are often clearer than the theory.